It's a quiet afternoon in a bustling suburban shopping district. People move about their day, grabbing coffee, running errands, browsing the shelves of their favorite stores. Among them is a man dressed simply, a crisp shirt, jeans, and a warm smile. He steps into a familiar shop, a place he's visited countless times in his life's journey. But today, something feels off. The moment he crosses the threshold, the chatter of the store dies down. A glance from the man at the counter turns cold. The kind of look that isn't just impolite, it's deliberate. Within seconds, an ordinary visit turns into a confrontation. "Can I help you?" the store owner asks, his tone clipped, dismissive, laced with judgment. The man replies calmly and courteously, "I'm just here to have a look." But his response is met with a sharp retort. "We don't serve people like you here. You need to leave." It was the kind of moment no one ever expects, the kind that can make you question everything, your worth, your place, your humanity. But what neither the store owner nor the onlookers realized was this: the man they had just turned away wasn't an ordinary customer. He was the one person in the entire chain who had the power to change everything. And that's exactly what he intended to do. What happened next would send shockwaves far beyond the walls of that small store, forever changing the lives of everyone involved. Before we get into this story, take a moment to share where you're watching from in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for daily news stories. Before this moment in the store, there was a boy named David. He grew up in a small town where the streets were quiet, but the unspoken rules were loud and clear. David learned early what it meant to be judged by something he couldn't change. He was taught to keep his head down, to stay out of trouble, and to work twice as hard for half the recognition. David's parents, hard-working and proud, never let their struggles dampen their spirit. His mother often told him, "Kindness will take you further than anger ever could." It wasn't an easy lesson, especially in a world that seemed determined to test that belief at every turn. As a teenager, David found comfort in books about entrepreneurship, devouring stories of those who rose from humble beginnings to unimaginable success. He dreamed of one day owning something of his own, not just to prove he could, but to show others what was possible. When he wasn't working odd jobs or studying, he was sketching out plans for a future he couldn't yet see, but somehow always believed in. The road wasn't without its challenges. Discrimination followed him like a shadow. College applications were dismissed without explanation, and job interviews were cut short the moment he walked into the room. But with every setback, David doubled down. Slowly, he climbed, brick by brick, opportunity by opportunity. He started small, one store, then two, pouring every ounce of energy and heart into making them successful. He believed in treating every employee and every customer with respect and dignity. That belief wasn't just a principle, it was the foundation of his business. Today, David is more than the sum of his struggles. He is the CEO of a thriving national chain of stores, employing thousands of people and creating opportunities in communities like the one he came from. Yet despite his success, David remains a man of humility. He dresses simply, speaks softly, and walks into his stores, not as a boss, but as someone who genuinely cares. But even with all that he's accomplished, there are still moments, unexpected and unguarded, when the past finds its way back into the present. This was one of those moments. The man who walked into that store wasn't just there to check inventory or review sales figures. He was there to reconnect with the heart of his business, the people, the experience. He didn't expect to be welcomed like a celebrity, but what happened next caught him entirely off guard. It was meant to be an ordinary visit. David had always preferred to see his stores as his customers did, not as a CEO with fanfare and advance notice, but as a quiet observer. That morning he chose a location he hadn't visited in years, a small storefront in a busy district, bustling with regulars and new visitors alike. David walked in unnoticed, blending into the crowd, his unassuming demeanor a deliberate choice. As he stepped inside, the soft chime of the doorbell rang out, but the greeting he received wasn't warm. Behind the counter stood the store owner, a man who appeared seasoned in the business, but whose eyes held something colder. The owner's gaze lingered on David for a moment too long before his expression hardened. "Can I help you?" the man asked, but his words lacked the courtesy the question implied. David smiled politely. "Just browsing," he said. His response, however, seemed to set something off. The owner's voice came again, firmer now. "We don't have what you're looking for." His words hung in the air, their weight unmistakable. David looked around, puzzled but calm. "I'm not looking for anything specific," he replied. But before he could say more, the man interrupted, his tone rising. "I think you should leave." David paused, his composure unwavering, though the sting of the words was impossible to ignore. He met the owner's gaze, his voice measured. "Excuse me, I just wanted to have a look." The owner leaned forward, his face set in a mask of authority. "I said leave. I'll call the police if I have to." The room seemed to grow quieter, the exchange drawing the attention of other customers. Some froze in place, their curiosity piqued. Others shifted uncomfortably, their gazes darting between David and the store owner. The tension was thick, and yet David remained calm, his demeanor unshaken. Years of facing this kind of treatment had taught him to choose his words carefully. "Is there a reason I'm being asked to leave?" David asked, his voice even. The owner scoffed. "We don't serve people like you. Try somewhere else." The statement landed with a force that was impossible to ignore, its meaning clear to everyone in the room. For a moment, David simply stood there, absorbing the weight of what had just been said. Around him, whispers began to ripple through the store. Some customers glanced away, unwilling to meet his gaze. Others watched their expressions a mix of shock and discomfort. But David didn't flinch. Instead, he took a slow breath and glanced around the store, his eyes taking in every detail, every face, every reaction. What the owner didn't know, and couldn't have guessed, was that David had walked into this store not as an outsider, but as the very person responsible for its success. The man who was now being told to leave was the same man whose vision had built the foundation of everything this store stood for. But David wasn't ready to reveal that, not yet. David stood there, silent, as the words hung in the air like an accusation. The store owner, emboldened by David's calm response, seemed to grow more agitated. He stepped out from behind the counter, his voice louder now, sharp enough to cut through the murmurs of the other customers. "I said you need to leave," the owner barked, pointing toward the door. "We don't have time for this." David didn't move. He simply looked at the man, his expression steady, composed. The owner's frustration seemed to build with every second of David's silence. One of the customers, a middle-aged woman holding a small basket, finally spoke up. Her voice, though soft, carried enough conviction to cut through the tension. "Excuse me," she said, looking directly at the store owner. "Why are you talking to him like that? He hasn't done anything wrong." The owner turned toward her, his face a mask of irritation. "This is my store," he snapped. "I'll run it how I see fit. If you don't like it, you're welcome to shop somewhere else." The woman hesitated, clearly taken aback by the hostility, but she didn't back down. "You can't just treat people like this," she said, her voice firmer now. "It's not right." A murmur of agreement rippled through the small crowd. Others shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to step in or stay silent. The tension was thick, and yet David remained quiet, his presence calm, deliberate. The store owner waved his hand dismissively, clearly irritated. "I don't need advice from you or anyone else," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Turning back to David, he added, "And as for you, I told you to get out. Don't make me call the police." At that moment, David spoke, his voice measured but carrying a weight that commanded attention. "Are you sure you want to handle your customers this way?" he asked, his tone devoid of anger but full of intent. The question hung in the air as if it demanded an answer far beyond the words themselves. The owner laughed, a short, humorless sound. "I don't answer to anyone," he said, his arrogance on full display. "This is my store, and I make the rules." The room was silent now, every eye fixed on the exchange. The customers, the staff, even the owner himself seemed to sense that something was shifting, though no one could quite say what it was. David's expression didn't change, but his next words carried a quiet authority that was impossible to ignore. "Everyone answers to someone," he said simply, his tone calm but unyielding. He glanced around the store, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the staff, the shelves, and the small details that only someone who knew the business inside and out would notice. The owner, oblivious to the subtle shift in power, waved him off again. "Save your speeches," he said, turning to head back behind the counter. But as he moved, the murmurs among the customers grew louder, their unease transforming into something closer to outrage. David didn't move. He didn't raise his voice or demand anything. He simply waited, his quiet presence drawing more attention than the owner's outbursts ever could. Slowly, the atmosphere in the store began to change. The once dismissive whispers among the customers turned into murmurs of curiosity and solidarity. Something was about to happen, though no one, least of all the store owner, could have predicted what it would be. David stood still, his calm demeanor unshaken, as the store owner returned to his post behind the counter, visibly annoyed by the growing murmurs among the customers. The tension in the room was undeniable, but David remained composed, his gaze steady as he slowly reached into his pocket. From within he pulled out his phone, an action so simple, yet it seemed to carry weight in the charged atmosphere of the store. He didn't raise his voice, nor did he glance at the store owner as he dialed a number and brought the phone to his ear. His tone, when he spoke, was measured, professional, and carried an authority that seemed to silence the room entirely. "This is David Johnson, CEO of Apex Store Chain," he said, his voice calm but deliberate. "I'm currently at the location store, and we have a situation here that needs immediate attention." The store owner froze, mid-motion, the words landing with a force that seemed to knock the air out of the room. He turned slowly, his expression shifting from irritation to disbelief. His eyes darted to the phone in David's hand, as if trying to process what he had just heard. Customers, previously hesitant to engage, now stared openly, their shock mirrored in their faces. The owner stammered, his previous arrogance faltering. "Wait a minute," he said, stepping forward. "What are you talking about?" David finally looked at him, his expression still calm, but now carrying a clarity and weight that could not be ignored. "You've been refusing service to your CEO," David said, his voice steady but firm, "and unfortunately, our company will not tolerate this behavior." The color drained from the store owner's face as realization set in. His mouth opened as if to respond, but no words came out. The confidence, the entitlement, the authority he had wielded moments before, all of it seemed to crumble in an instant. Around them, the customers watched in stunned silence, the weight of the moment sinking in. David continued, now addressing the store's employees, who had been standing nervously behind the counter. "I'd like to speak with your regional manager," he said, still in the same composed tone. "Please let them know I'll be waiting." His words were clear and firm and left no room for argument. It didn't take long for corporate representatives to arrive. Their presence added a new layer to the unfolding scene, a mix of urgency and accountability. As they entered, David greeted them with the same calm professionalism he had maintained throughout the ordeal. He explained the situation succinctly, detailing the events without exaggeration, but with a clarity that left no room for doubt. The representatives turned to the store owner, their expressions a blend of disappointment and resolve. The once confident man now stood small and uncertain, his earlier bravado replaced with visible discomfort. The lead representative turned to David, apologizing profusely for the incident. But David, ever the professional, held up a hand. "This isn't about me," he said, his tone firm but fair. "It's about the values this company stands for, If this behavior is allowed to continue, it won't just hurt one person, it will damage the trust we've built with every customer who walks through these doors. The consequences were swift. The store owner was removed from his position on the spot. His actions were deemed a violation of the company's core values. The customers, previously hesitant witnesses, now nodded in agreement, some even offering quiet words of support to David as the scene unfolded. What had begun as a moment of humiliation for David had become a defining moment of accountability for everyone involved. And though he never sought to expose himself in this way, his actions spoke volumes, not just about his role as a leader, but about the importance of standing up to injustice, no matter where it occurs. The aftermath was swift and decisive. The store owner, who had once exuded confidence and authority, now found himself standing on the outside of his establishment. Corporate representatives didn't mince words as they informed him of his immediate termination. The decision was final, and there was no room for negotiation. Word spread quickly among the staff and customers still present in the store. Apologies were made, not just to David, but to every person who had been present to witness the incident. The corporate team, visibly shaken by what had transpired, acknowledged the gravity of the situation and promised immediate measures to ensure this would never happen again. But David wasn't interested in empty gestures. He stepped forward, addressing the remaining customers and employees with the quiet authority that had carried him through the day. "This store," he began, his voice calm but firm, "is part of a company that was built on the belief that every individual deserves to be treated with respect and dignity regardless of their background." His gaze moved across the room, meeting the eyes of those who had watched the events unfold. "Let this be a reminder," he continued, "that discrimination has no place here or anywhere else. It's not just bad for business, it's bad for humanity." His words resonated deeply, filling the room with a solemn understanding of the moment's importance. The impact didn't end there. By the time David left the store, word of the incident had already begun to spread. A customer who had witnessed the confrontation posted their account on social media, accompanied by a video they had recorded during the exchange. Within hours, the post had gone viral. Thousands of comments flooded in, praising David for his composure and condemning the actions of the store owner. The story became more than just a headline. It sparked a conversation, a collective reflection on the ways small everyday injustices contribute to a larger problem. Across platforms, people shared their own experiences, their frustrations, and their hopes for change. David's actions served as both a catalyst and a reminder. Standing up against discrimination isn't always easy, but it is always necessary. For David, the incident was a bittersweet moment. It wasn't about personal vindication or public recognition. It was about something much deeper, the values he had worked so hard to instill in his company and the responsibility he felt to hold himself and others accountable. As he walked out of the store that day, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought him here. In the days that followed, the company rolled out new training programs for all employees, aimed at addressing implicit bias and reinforcing a culture of inclusivity. The story continued to gain traction, becoming a touchpoint in broader discussions about equity and accountability in the workplace. And while the store owner's actions had sparked outrage, it was David's response that left an indelible mark on everyone who heard the story. It was a reminder that leadership isn't just about making decisions. It's about living the values you stand for, even when no one expects you to. And sometimes it's in the quietest, most unexpected moments that those values are truly put to the test. As David walked out of the store, the weight of the moment lingered, not just for him, but for everyone who had witnessed what unfolded that day. The confrontation wasn't just about a single store owner, a single decision, or even a single company. It was about something much bigger. It was a stark reminder of the challenges that persist in society, challenges that many face every day, often without the voice or the power to fight back. How many others, David thought, are turned away, silenced, or dismissed simply because of who they are. The truth is, the injustice he experienced is one piece of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle made up of countless moments just like this, happening in places we walk by every day. It's a question we all must ask ourselves. How often do we stand by and watch when moments like this occur? How many times have we chosen silence when our voices could have made a difference? David's story isn't just his. It belongs to all of us. It's a call to action, a challenge to do better, to speak up, and to hold each other accountable for the values we claim to stand for. In the end, it's not enough to simply condemn discrimination. True change requires more. It requires us to call out injustice when we see it, to stand with those who are wronged, and to foster a world where respect and dignity aren't privileges, they're rights. If this story resonates with you, share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who can make a difference. And if you believe stories like David's need to be told, let us know. Like this video, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue to shine a light on the issues that matter most. And as you go about your day, ask yourself, what would you have done in David's place? More importantly, what will you do the next time you see someone treated unfairly? Because in moments like these, it's not just about the person experiencing the injustice, it's about all of us. Together, we have the power to change the story.